Imagine seeing a man at your door, the same man who died a few weeks ago. Welcome to Once Upon a Cry, where history meets fear. My name is Alan, and tonight we're unraveling the dark origins of the vampires. I know you've heard the stories, you watch the movies, but what if I told you that some of the earliest recorded cases of vampirism were not just myths, but documented events? Don't believe me, huh? Okay then, let's grab some garlic and travel to Eastern Europe. We are in Serbia. The town is Kisilova, known today as Kisilievo. The year is 1725. Imagine you are one of the villagers waking up one night as someone knocked at your door. You open it, but there is no one there. Then, out of the corner of your eye, you see a figure watching you from the shadow. Your stomach drops because you know this person and they've been dead for weeks. This isn't a ghost story, this actually happened. A man named Petar Blagojevic had died at the age of 62. His burial was performed as expected, but after his death, a strange sickness spread throughout the village. Over the course of just 8 days, 9 people died suddenly from a mysterious illness, marked by high fever and a terrifying rapid death, often within just 24 hours. All of the victims, on their deathbed, claimed that Blagojevic had visited them in the night and strangled them. Also, his widows stated that her husband had returned from the grave and even demanded his shoes. He had then attempted to strangle her, though somehow survived, before moving to another village just to be safe. But there is more. Some people even claimed that Peter had killed his own son and drank his blood after he had refused to give him food. One thing was sure, the villagers were terrified. Could Petar have come back from the dead? Or was something else lurking in the darkness? And most importantly, why did I grab an onion instead of garlic? To understand what happened next, we need to take a step back, way back, to uncover the true origins of the vampires myth. Before Count Dracula, before Hollywood's movie, ancient civilizations had their own terrifying versions of the blood drinker. These creatures were real, at least in the minds of the people who feared them. For example, in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians, one of the earliest recorded civilizations, already spoke of the Ekimmu, vengeful spirits who roamed the earth, draining the life from the living. They were a type of utukku, some sort of demons in Mesopotamian religion. Unlike modern vampires who feast on blood, these beings were special parasites, feeding on energy and spreading despair. And the scariest part, anyone could become one. If a person, for example, died violently, was improperly buried, or was left to rot without funerary rites, they risk becoming an Ekimmu, a shadow of their former self, cursed to haunt the living for the eternity. Ancient burial sites suggest that people took extreme precautions to prevent this. For example, heavy stones were placed on graves and bodies were bound, as if to keep them from rising. The fear was real, spanning across culture from the Sumerians to the Assyrians and the Babylonians. Jump forward to ancient Greece, we find another chilling figure, Lamia or Lamia. The myths surrounding Lamia are deeply tragic. Once a beautiful queen of ancient Libya, she had an affair with Zeus and bore his children. But when Zeus' wife, Hera, found out, she took a cruel revenge, stealing Lamia's children, hiding them, killing them. In some versions of the stories, looks like she even forced Lamia to kill them herself. The grief drove Lamia mad, and she began hunting and devouring the children of others. She was often depicted as half woman, half serpent. Some say she could even remove her own eyes to stay awake, ensuring she would never stop hunting. Over time, the legend of Lamia evolved into a night-stalking predator, blending beauty and horror, a theme that would later, much later, define the classic vampire. Meanwhile, in India, the Vetala, a powerful paranormal entity from the Hindu mythology, haunted graveyards, possessing corpses and driving people to madness. Unlike Western vampires who thirst for blood, the Vetala craved for something much more sinister: control. Legends speak of kings, warriors, travelers who encounter these spirits only to have their minds shattered. Some stories even suggest that the Vetala possess ancient knowledge, testing humans not just by preying on them, but by challenging them to the very boundaries of morality, ethics, and logic. So as you can see, across the world, culture were forming their own version of the undead, long before the word vampire was even spoken. But why? Why did so many civilizations fear the idea of the dead returning? Was it paranoia, a way to explain mysterious deaths, or something was truly lurking in the dark? Now that we understand some of these ancient fears, let's return to Kisilova in 1725. In this part of the world, tales of the undead were not bedtime stories, they were warnings. During the 18th century, especially in Serbia, Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria, vampire hysteria had reached their boiling point. Vampires were believed to be reanimated corpses of their peasants who rose from the grave to drink blood, spread disease, and even slaughter livestock. So when strange deaths began to sweep through Kisilova, the people knew exactly what they were dealing with, or at least they thought they did. Terrified and desperate, the villagers demanded actions, and fast. They summoned Cameral Provisor Frombald, a local health official who worked for the Austrian government and was tasked with investigating and preventing plagues, and pressured him to destroy Petar's corpse. At first, Frombald was reluctant to dig up the body. He told the villagers that would have to get permission first from Belgrade, but the villagers, now frantic, insisted that there was no time. By the time he got permission, they said that the entire village would be dead, as happened with many other towns during the Turkish times, when the region used to be part of the Ottoman Empire. It was now or never, either disinter Petar's body or we leave the village. Frombald gave in to public pressure eventually, and together with a priest from a neighboring town, took Petar out of his grave and examined his body. In the report written for official in Belgrade, he said that he had found no typical odor of the dead. The body, apart from the nose, was in fresh conditions. New nails had grown to replace old ones fallen away, and fresh skin had formed beneath the peeling layers of decay. But most disturbing of all, there was some fresh blood in his mouth, as if he had truly fed on the villagers he was accused of killing. At the end of his report, Frombald asked that if these superiors found any wrongdoings in Petar's case, they wouldn't blame him, as he could not stop the terrified villagers. As a result, some people think that he may have embellished the details surrounding the autopsy in order to make the story more believable. However, other contemporary investigations into vampires in Serbia had similar findings, which means Frombald may have been telling the truth. But what about the villagers? Of course, they were in total shock, and there was no doubt Petar had become a vampire. So what do you do when the dead won't stay dead? The answer is simple. You make sure they can't come back again. Following the ancient rituals passed down through generations, they drove a wooden stake through Petar's heart, and according to the reports, fresh blood gushed from his body. And, just as extra precaution, they also burned his remains. And just like that, the mysterious deaths stopped. This wasn't just a superstition, it was one of the earliest officially recorded vampire cases in history. But before we analyze the event with scientific eye, let's think of how this and similar episodes affected modern pop culture. Vampires were not just the stuff of peasant legends. By the 19th century, they made their way into literature as well. The first major vampire novel, The Vampire by John Polidori, published in 1819, which introduced the first idea of the aristocratic, seductive vampire. Then of course came Dracula in 1897, Bram Stoker's masterpiece that cemented many of the vampire's tropes we know today. Fangs, immortality, fear of sunlight, and of course the insatiable thirst for blood. And from there vampires exploded into pop culture, from Bela Lugosi's Dracula in 1931 to Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire, all the way to Twilight. These creatures have remained one of the most enduring myths of all time, but why? Maybe it's their mortality, the dark allure, the fear that something out there still lurks in the night. Oh, that must be Petar. Let's get back to him. So, was Petar really a vampire? Or was something else going on? Believe it or not, science has explanation for many vampires' legends. First, tuberculosis or consumption made victims appear gaunt, pale, and even cough up blood, eerily similar to vampire attacks. Then we have rabies. Rabies victims often have extreme sensitivity to light, difficulty swallowing, and a tendency to bite. Again, very similar to the vampire myths. Another theory involves some rare genetic disorders, like for example porphyria, which makes skin extremely sensitive to sunlight, potentially inspiring some of the folklore. Then there is sleep paralysis. People who suffer from this condition often wake up unable to move, feeling a weight on their chest, sometimes even seeing shadowy figure looming over them. In pre-scientific societies, this terrifying episode could easily be interpreted as a nocturnal attack by vampires. With regards to the exhumation of the bodies and the state that can be found in, the natural process of decomposition can make their hair and nail appear to grow. Bodies sometimes look fresh due to the bloating of purged fluid. Corpses sometimes release gases that can cause groaning sounds, which terrifies those who exhumed them. But back in the 18th century, none of this was understood, so to people the answer was clear: vampires were real. So what happened in Kisilova? Was this a case of superstition meeting mass hysteria? Did the plague kill those victims? But then, why did it apparently stop after Petar's cremation? Stories like the one of Petar Blagojevic are not just relics of the past. They shaped the vampire legends we know today, influencing everything from folklore to Hollywood. But why do these stories still haunt us? Maybe it's our fear of death, our fascination with immortality, or maybe, just maybe, some legends hold more truth than we'd like to admit. Let me know what you think in the comments, and one last thing. Have you ever dug up a grave? No judgment, just curiosity. Thanks for watching.